What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Meran podcast. Today, my guest is Torin Yater-Wallace. Torin is a pro skier from Colorado. He was introduced to the world in 2011 when he joined the Armada team at only 14. Torin quickly became one of the best skiers in the world with his unique style, deep bag of tricks, and incredible results in halfpipe competitions. For close to 10 years, Torin dominated the pipe competition scene with constant podiums in the world's biggest events. He finished his comp career with multiple Du Tour and World Cup podiums, a total of 8 X Games medals, including 3 gold and 2 Olympics appearances. In the past 4 seasons, Torin fully transitioned to the film side of the sport, starting his own production company, Deviate Films. He now spends most of his seasons producing and starring in ski movies, skiing everything from street to POW and parkshoots. In this episode, we talked about a bunch of stuff. The life of producing ski movies with Deviate, the fine details of filming street and POW, the current state and future of pipe skiing, and much, much more. Shout out to the patrons on Patreon: Will Cameron, Raf Diaz, Laurent Olivier Martin, Holden Baldassi, Ryan Bruninghouse, Sam Chef, and Nick Gosselin. Thanks to the sponsors, Planks Clothing, Decan's Restaurants, and Axis Board Shop. Let's go! Mr. Torin Yater-Wallace, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Stoked to be on.
Yeah, man, stoked to have you. Legend in the place. How's it going these days? Where are you at? What's your we're mid-March. What's your vibe these days?
Yeah, I'm in Bozeman right now, actually. Just been on the road for quite a few weeks right now. Throughout the whole season so far, we've been filming for our new movie with Deviate. It's been a good season for sure. Definitely a lot more snow than last year, which has been nice. We spent a good chunk of time at the beginning of the season shooting street for a little while. Myself and Kim Boberg and Cody LaPlante and Cody Wilderay also. But unfortunately, on like the second day of our trip, he crashed pretty hard and had to go home. So that was a real bummer. But yeah, since a lot of the street stuff wrapped up, we've been on the road, kind of on the POW mission for probably at this point like a month, give or take. Definitely had a few good trips. I don't know. Stoked on some shots I have in the bag for sure, but kind of always like never feel content, I guess is the best way to put it. So from from here on out through the next month, like mid-April, trying to go super hard and kind of fulfill what I'd like to have to kind of complete a segment that I'd be proud of. So
Mm-hmm. You've been on the Deviate mission of producing movies for it's your 4th season now. What's usually your end of season shooting? Like, do you just wait for a time when you're like, okay, I have enough shots, or is there a time when other obligations come around? Like, what's the time of the season when you're done with that usually?
I'd say when we kind of wrap up the season filming certainly varies. Like um, it could be obligations. Like a lot of stuff comes up in the spring, right? Whether that's like events, park shoots, different sponsor obligations. The springtime is usually pretty packed with that kind of stuff. So last year, for instance, which will be pretty similar to this year, we'll be kind of wrapping up around that like mid-April window, somewhere around like the 15th. With that being said, that's kind of because right now we've got plans to go back down to Winter Park this spring to do Bobby's event with Red Bull, which I think starts on the 19th. Um,
The slope style one?
yeah, it's like the all mountain slopestyle event.
Was it kind of a test event last year, or because there was some content, but it didn't look official really?
Yeah, exactly. Like last year was definitely still a full event, but very much kind of first year testing things out. Um, and it was super fun. It was, yeah, pretty crazy setup. And we Yeah, I mean, they did such an unbelievable job, and Bobby had such a cool vision that he brought into reality. So probably wrapping up around that April time window, mid-April, head to that, and then get a little bit of time at home after that, as spending most of the winter on the road these days with everything we're doing, filming for the movie. Super nice to get a few days at home, and then shortly thereafter go to Sweden for Kimbo sessions. And yeah, that was the program last year. This year looks very much similar, but for instance, like our first movie we did 4 seasons ago, I think I got my last clip like the first few days of May.
Mm.
Granted, that was during the pandemic, and there was no other like events or anything I would have been going to anyway. And we had a good snow year in Colorado, so we were able to kind of just keep pushing late into the season, kind of transitioning over from the more like wintry POW snow, right, to that kind of spring corn snow. Um, but either way, just kind of like finding little features we can build and having such a fun time out in the backcountry in Colorado at that time. So I guess it kind of depends, and certainly, um, I think I would also come down to a point where like I'd be looking back on what I have, right, and trying to kind of assess how fulfilled I am, which is always tough because I'm never quite fulfilled after a season. It's hard to. That's what keeps us, hungry, and kind of the mindset being a quote unquote professional, right? You're a bit of a perfectionist at your art, so I don't think uh, I don't think anybody's ever just kind of fully content. Like, oh yeah, that's a perfect segment, right? That's impossible.
I'd like to ask like some of the guys who have done some of the greatest segment and ask them like in that year did you know it was that good or were you still like wanting more?
Yeah, I would honestly be interested to ask the same thing, right? Like some of those like iconic ones. I think there's probably an underlying feeling like, damn, I'm sitting on like probably some of my best stuff.
Same as when you're getting just one specific shot when it's a banger, you know it.
Yeah,
You
for
don't have
sure.
that feeling, you know it right away that okay, that one was good.
Yeah.
Might be the same
And
thing with the whole.
it also kind of leads to sometimes a bit of like an underlying stress, as I'm always like kind of, if I'm just sitting and like there's good snow somewhere, I feel like I'm wasting time and I like should be out there because like I'm just kind of, yeah, have a racing mind that feels like, winter's only so long. And if you're like wasting any second, like it's when you could be getting clips, and clips don't come easy, right? Like
Yeah.
we just had a few days we were going out, and we did a little 3-day trip, and 2 of the days like we didn't even ski because you're just out there on the sled searching for a feature or good snow, maybe not finding any of it, right?
You're making me think of something like regarding that the aspect of looking for a feature. There's something that's nice for street skiing where you can explore during the summer.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
as long as as long as you're not clueless, you can like figure out what it'll look like in the winter and like assess is that something we'll be able to do
Yeah.
this winter. That doesn't really apply to PAL, right? It's not as if you're going in the woods during the summer and like
Yeah, in theory, like you definitely could go hike around in the backcountry, but everything looks so vastly different with, 6 feet of snow on top of it, right? So you can definitely tell certain areas like a good roll that could definitely be like a jump landing that's, north to northeast, east facing. Um, but you're also going to have to go backpacking if you want to go check that out. So, I mean, some areas, if there's good single trail, you could go dirt biking and check it out. But for the most part, I'm not filming too much in Colorado during the midst of the winter until the spring, just due to our snowpack usually being fairly unstable, just due to the climate that we live at. the dryness and the snowpack and how rocky our terrain is at the elevation we live in. So I'd have to get on a serious road trip in the winter with a dirt bike. But with that being said, sometimes the search is fun, whether that's street or pow skiing. It can
Yeah.
get a little bit frustrating, like some nights driving around looking for spots in the car, just hours on end sitting in traffic. And but that's part of the grind. And at the end of the day, it's like it's what makes like the whole mission fun. You're with the boys, and while sometimes get a little bit frustrated, at the end of the day, when you do find that feature, it's usually worth that the mission to look for.
And now it's time for a first sponsor break. I love Planks Clothing. I've been using their gear for 3 seasons now, and I only have great things to say. Great, stylish products that get the job done whether I'm skiing on the hill or filming street with the boys. Spring season is upon us, and Planks Clothing is here with a new streetwear drop on their website. Made from 100% organic cotton, these hoodies and t-shirts will keep you looking fresh for seasons to come. My favorite one is the smiley hoodie that I'll be rocking for sure this coming spring and summer. Check out the new streetwear drop at planksclothing.com. Support companies who support skiing. Support Planks Clothing. Because as you were saying, that must be stressful. We'll get to talk about that. Maybe that'll be a good timing for you to tell us about your role with Deviate. But you're an athlete. You're also a producer, I assume, of some sort. So you know that you need to do certain stuff to make the movie happen, and then you have a time window to shoot at that location, and then you're spending 1 or 2 days, as you were saying, just looking for something, and then you haven't started shoveling, you haven't started trying out to get the shot, you don't know what the weather will look like. It's a lot of juggling with uncertainties or variables that some you control, some you just don't control. How do you handle that on your end?
Yeah, it's definitely been a pretty significant change over the past 4 years to kind of what my winters and even summers look like versus that of more of the years I spent focused on competitive skiing.
Yeah.
I'd say um, with what I'm doing now and everything that we're doing with Deviate, the film company we started 4 years ago, um, it's been pretty eye opening for sure. I'd say some of the little nuances that kind of come to mind immediately are just a lot more legwork. Um, maybe from the outside looking in, people could think like winning a contest might be one of the harder things, right? And that's different people who have different mental strengths, and obviously you got to train and have the tricks. But when you're skiing competitively, especially if you're on a national team or something, everything's fairly set up for you in the sense of your number one job is to ski.
Hmm.
And that's what you get to focus on. That's what you should focus on, and that's your main role. Everything with travel is one of the only things you really have to look into. Um, for instance, the US team would tell you, hey, training starts on this Monday, um, the finals end on this Sunday, book a flight that gets in this day, have your departure date be this day. Rental cars are already set up by them, lodging's all set up. You have physical therapists, the whole 9 yards. It's very streamlined, right? Like
Yeah.
that's your number one role is to go compete and do it at the best level. As you kind of start to get into filming for a movie, especially if you're taking on the role of trying to do it yourself, which was one of the main things I wanted to do as I was kind of transitioning to fully focusing on filming for a movie project. I really wanted to do something on my own, on our own, Jossie and I originally. So taking on that role definitely came with a lot of responsibilities, and some of that, for instance, is even just you're trying to set up a pitch deck to send to sponsors to try and get support for the upcoming movie, right? Alongside that, kind of mapping out, planning out where you're going to go, following the storms and the radar, booking Airbnbs, knowing intel on a zone so you know it's somewhere you should be going. Um, Trying to obviously like factor in exactly how much budget you have to spend on a filmer and hire somebody, and just putting a lot of money on your credit card that you're hopefully going to get invoiced for at the end of that month, etc., or maybe even at the end of that year. Just always kind of, you know, it's a lot of different moving parts to create 1 2 second little clip, and ideally you want at least 15 of those. So it's been fun though, for sure. I mean, I suppose what I'm getting at is I could have very easily joined alongside an existing production company that has everything dialed, that's been doing it forever, and it would work great, get clips and have a segment in somebody's movie. Um, but I really just kind of had a vision to start something on our own, kind of create a culture within our crew, and build out a bit of a production company that we have full creative control, and can really just create an original piece that we're hyped on how it looks. And
Kudos to you for doing it, because you have the star power and the sponsor power to bring attention and money and funding to a project, right? That other skiers might not have. They'll have a good pitch, but at some point they're not Torin Yater-Wallace. With that, no, but I mean there's a status that you have, like Henrik, or Henrik starting his clothing brand that now helps him bring in other people. It's something cool that you might not have done for those reasons, and it's not a reason. It's just something that helps. That now you're filming right now with Burke Irving and Benny Smith, and you're producing something of your own, which is super cool because you've always had your distinct style and you were on a comp schedule, but you could see that like your style was made for films. Like it was calling to be done at some point, and it's cool that you're doing it now with your own, like as you said, creative control.
yeah, I'm hyped, man. It's been super fun so far, and definitely something I'm proud of. Um, a lot of things that we certainly need to figure out and do better just as the years go on. I think like gaining traction and starting a YouTube channel, like um, it's almost like you've got to have another person along board to be like almost even like full-time social media, or just helping with marketing, that kind of stuff. Because whether I've grown a bit of name for myself over the years or not, it's still, you've got to be putting content out and creating hype around something.
Yeah, it's always an ongoing work.
For sure, man. Like, I'm stoked with what we've done, but I certainly think that we can grow and do a lot of things better. And it's, been yeah, it's been super fun. I'm
Hmm.
I'm super hyped that we kind of have grown the roster that we've had throughout the years with different people involved, from Jossie and I initially starting this whole thing together just ourselves, to um, Burke Irving had a few shots in that first movie. McCrae Williams was on a trip to Japan the following year. Burke had a full segment. We had Chris Logan in our movie, which was unbelievable. His part was definitely one of my favorites that I think has ever been in one of our films. Going into last year, Quinn Wolferman hopped on board for last year's movie, which was very much a standout part, in my opinion. And Kim Boberg was able to come on the road with us as well, and get in the backcountry, which was super cool because that was kind of a first for him. And then Cody LaPlante last year as well, filming a street part that was pretty insane. That I think should definitely get some more eyes on it because it was
Yeah,
mental.
yeah. His closing shot is insane on that Minnesota Dub King.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've like tried to explain to people how crazy it was, but it's almost like you have to see it in real life to understand like how steep that rail is.
Well, that's always the problem with street. Yeah. Like if you know, you know. If you've already done it, you know it's long, you know it's steep, you know the trick is hard, you know there's a fence.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's always like
yeah. there's so many factors to that shot that definitely make it like one of the craziest things I've ever seen in person. Like I was I was like towing him in with a car down a street. It's like the steepest dub kink I've ever seen. There's a fence at the bottom where you ride out that if you land on the left side, you're gonna hit.
Hmm.
And he does lip two onto it, and it's on that lip two.
Yeah, and he rides it out perfect.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty mind blowing. So that was definitely like a really cool addition, I think, and finally getting some street in our projects to just create more of a full product. I think is super cool. And then with Strictly wrapping up and doing their last movie this past season, Benny Smith and I had chatted last spring and this past summer to link up. So Benny's involved in this movie too, which is pretty
Yeah,
wild.
and he's a great addition. Like his shots and like he's been killing it for years now.
Yeah, yeah,
Like especially in the, I feel like, was it 2 years ago in their movie Wildcard? He had
yeah, yeah. It
insane
was
shots.
that part was crazy. So yeah, hanging around him and watching what he's been doing in person is yeah, I'd say he's one to look out for, man. He skis with confidence and he steps up to some big stuff.
So what's your crew this year?
Yeah, so far it's been Cody LaPlante, Kim Boberg, and myself kind of filming more on the street tip earlier this year. Cody Wilderay as well, who was able to film a part with us last year, and unfortunately got hurt at the beginning of the season, which was a bummer. And then more alongside of this POW mission side of the year, um, Benny Smith, Quinn Wolferman, Burke Irvin, and obviously myself again. So it's
That's a stacked
yeah,
lineup.
it's been super fun so far, man. Um, just trying to everything we've kind of done here with Deviate has certainly not been possible without Corey Stanton. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've gotten to um, meet or hang around Corey at all, but
I've seen his stuff since like over 10 years. Like he's been.
yeah, for sure, dude. So when we started um, filming for our first movie, we went to Japan, and I'd hit up Corey, and he was down to come out and film that trip. Corey Stanton, he's the in-house editor, filmer, producer at Armada. Um, he's been there since I've been with Armada, and just all around great dude. He's got his own production company as well. And after that trip, he just was so helpful with everything going into the back end with post production during that first movie. And he's kind of stuck around and taken on the role of one of the main producers and managers for everything we're doing with Deviate. Um, and I literally like I can't even explain how much help he is with just like making everything work, allocating the budget, all the back end stuff that's, the little nuances to actually make something like a project like this happen. So Core's MVP for sure.
So the producing guys behind the scenes making it happen is mostly Corey and you.
My agent Michael Spencer,
Yeah.
one of the other main producers, and Corey Stanton and myself, and Jossie Wells as well, who wasn't involved in the last movie because he was hurt. He ruptured his patella tendon. Um, that was September, October of 2021. So he wasn't in Chameleon last year. He was recovering, and this year he's back on skis, which is super dope. He came on a couple trips with us here earlier over the last month, but ultimately his knee is still definitely not feeling 100%, which was a real bummer. Um, so was able to hang, which was unreal to have him back out there with the squad because missing him last year was a real bummer. He's definitely, just good company to be around. I love skiing with him and watching him ride. But yeah, he was able to come on a couple trips this year, mostly doing a couple turns and hanging around, which was a sick vibe. He put out a little behind the scenes GoPro video the other day. So
He'll have a couple shots in the movie, I guess.
I hope so, but like I said, it's just
TBD.
yeah, like he's just I mean that injury rupturing the patella tendon, he did it to his other knee in May of 2017, I think.
Damn.
Um, and it's like at least a year and a half recovery until you're feeling like really solid. And he's like not even quite at a year and a half right now.
Mm.
So he came out and kind of tested it out, and ultimately it was just in a bunch of pain, which was super sad. But like I said, it was also so fun to have him hanging around with the squad again. Just like yeah, when you miss out on a year with the boys filming for a movie, you definitely like want their presence back involved, and want
Hmm.
the same vibe that it's been over the previous years.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Dickens is a family owned fast food restaurant chain with 12 locations in the Montreal region. Close to 70 years after opening their first restaurant on Montreal's Boulevard Pineuf, Dickens is still focused on what matters, the same great menu with great food made with quality ingredients. I've said it, I'm a Dickens super fan, and many people ask me what's my go to. I have to say it's their famous Wally burger. A double cheeseburger with slices of pepperoni. It's so good. Dickens is now selling their sauce in their restaurants and in many Metro grocery stores throughout Quebec. Plus, they've put a bunch of great recipes to go along with it on their website at dickenssauce.com. Also, big news, their Saint Jerome location is reopened. Same location, brand new building. Go check them out when you pass by Saint Jerome. Support companies who support skiing, support Dickens restaurants. Yeah, coming back from knee injuries looks so hard because there's a point where you're good to go back. You've done your rehab, you're good, but you're rusty and your knee is still hurting. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
you don't have a you know you have a short amount of time before you have to stop because you're hurting. But in that time, it's not as if you're getting bangers because you're still rusty. So
yeah, definitely. And pain management too, for sure. It's just a hassle.
you've mentioned it quickly at the beginning of the episode that you know you've been kind of on a nonstop mission and you're getting ready for some days off. How does it compare the hustle life to make a ski film happen versus the comp skiing hustle life? Because we've heard it a lot of comp skiers, going to X Games and then Olympics and many comps, and then they're like, okay, I'm due for a break. Like it's draining. Is it similar? Is it different now that you're kind of your own boss, but you're still imposing like you're still getting shit done?
I'd say the grind kind of comparing like working on a film for the year versus that of like fulfilling a whole comp schedule is similar in certain aspects, but a lot different in other aspects. Um, I mean, it varies in both in the sense of like, how many times did you crash? Like, how's your body feeling, right? And it definitely can get pretty draining on the comp side of things. With that being said, especially if you're kind of trying to go to every event, which is not something I ever really focused on doing. Um, Even from a young age, I very well like kind of knew my limits and knew what contests I really cared about and knew which ones I didn't.
Hmm.
Granted, you're not necessarily in a position like that at the start of your career, right?
Yeah. But what do you mean by limits? Do you mean like in terms of energy?
Yeah, just in terms of energy, you definitely like listen to your body, and when things are hurting, and when it's not worth pushing it because then you might miss the next week. You know what I mean? There's definitely yeah, just certain times you got to make the call to maybe skip this week's event or something like that.
Hmm.
Because if you don't, and maybe you deck there, you crash there, something like that, then maybe you'll miss the next 2 weeks, right? Some little things like that. So, um, but yeah, like I was saying, during kind of the earlier stages of your career, when you're kind of building a name for yourself, and maybe you don't have the results yet, you're very much going to every event. You're trying to grind out, get results. You're also a teenager, so you can handle a little bit more. Um, but I definitely would say in the latter years of when I was focusing full time on events, I was definitely picking and choosing a little bit more. Um, just certain things that I cared more about than others, right? I think there's a lot of um, history and um, just a lot of importance to that of like X Games and Do Tour, for instance, within free skiing and the history of our sport and your legacy. So those two definitely always meant the most to me. Never really cared much for World Cups, but definitely did a few of them every year when I needed to, especially the ones in the U.S. you had to do for the U.S. team.
Right.
Um,
Like you were obligated to?
yeah, you have to do like the Grand Prix they're called, which are just World Cups, but that's what the ones in the U.S. are called. So usually only a couple of those a year, so you had to do those. Um, I also just kind of had such a love for riding park, or maybe at that point I had already gotten a snowmobile and trying to get out and get some clips in the backcountry and other stuff. So I definitely had a little bit more of a luxury in the latter end of some of the in the latter end of ski and half pipe full time that I was doing, that I kind of could pick and choose a little bit um, due to some of the success that I had had throughout the years. But with that being said, some people just love the grind and want to go to every contest, and it definitely does get pretty insane.
It could have been tempting for you to do more because you were dominating. So it's not as if, most likely you'll win some money and you'll win some, like there's a
Yeah,
lot of
for
positive that
sure.
come out of it. So it says a lot about your passion for skiing as a whole and doing other stuff than pipe. Being like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I'm good. I'll do other stuff.
yeah, definitely. And also, I think a lot what it comes down to is like, I really like to have the mindset that I'm skiing for myself, and just going to another contest because maybe you could win a little bit of money, or maybe you get some sponsor incentives, or whatever it may be. If I personally wasn't wanting to go, and I never really cared for World Cups much anyway,
Yeah.
um, much less fun to go to than that of like Do Tour and X Games, especially at the time. Just the way they run, the money is quite a lot more, the publicity is more. Um, you just feel like they mean more. There's more legacy, right?
Hmm.
So,
Definitely.
um,
It shows that you came in right before the whole national teams and everything.
definitely. I mean, I've always liked to think that I came in right on the brink of both sides.
Yeah.
Like the year that I started, the year that I did my first X Games and first World Cups, Do Tour, all that was the year before they started the national team, or maybe that summer was when it started. So I kind of got like a little taste right before, but then I was definitely at the forefront of everything national teams and Olympics. So I'd like to think I kind of got a glimpse into both eras, right, of this competitive ski world that we live and exist in. But the grind of the contest, going back to kind of the initial contest, definitely pretty intense, especially if you are doing a pretty full schedule. And if you're mending or dealing with an injury, it's gets pretty crazy just going week to week.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say probably some of like the most sore times I've ever been is definitely after a final of a big half pipe contest, right? But I think touching back on what I was saying before, in the sense that if you are at that top level, you have a big team around you with support of coordinating everything, getting from event to event, and even just tiny little nuances like rental cars and lodging. That stuff is definitely an extra step that you got to think about when you're out filming a movie. So I would definitely say that these past years filming for our four Deviate movies have been the hardest I've worked in my ski career by far.
Outside of the skiing, or meaning
Everything.
skiing and outside of skiing?
outside and in skiing, right? Like a lot of back end logistics that um, kind of add up when your job is to be putting out the best segment you can, and
Hmm.
your actual job is skiing. And I'd like to think that I can just focus on that full time, but maybe I've done a little bit of it to myself, right? Taking on some extra roles, which sometimes I'm working on getting out of that and trying to bring more people in to help out with that kind of stuff. But I mean, whether it's outside of skiing stuff and the logistics of just booking Airbnbs and coordinating the whole crew together, building out plans for the year, hiring everybody to do the post production, setting up premieres for the movie, figuring out, getting all of our social posts and assets made for us and all the brands that support to put out and, get them stoked and get their deliverables so they're hyped to have some content, all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah.
Plus, just the hard work of hiking a rail 190
Yeah.
times to get a 2-second clip.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Axis Board Shop has been dedicated to free skiing since its inception in 2002. At a time when some people and brands were still looking down on free skiing, Axis believed in it fully. After 20 years of supporting athletes, movies, competitions, events, and so much more, Axis is still going strong. This season, they're bringing back the infamous Summit Challenge. They're also starting the Grommet Challenge, a video competition aimed at young filmmakers where the winner gets an invite to participate in the Summit Challenge. They also started the Rat Races this season, friendly racing events through a bank slalom course with features in it where everyone is welcome. Above all, Axis is a ski shop where you'll find everything you need for skiing, snowboarding, or skateboarding. Check them out in store in Saint-Sauveur or online at axisboutique.com. Support companies who support skiing. Support Axis Board Shop. You're giving me the best pass right now, because you did some street last year,
Yeah.
which I say big ups to you because what I think typically is Torin has done pipe for years in the rough side of things where you get hurt, it's hard. You think he'd want to take the mellow route and do some pow turns in Japao, but then you still went at it in the street. And there's a couple of shots in last year's movie Chameleon where you go to spots that have been hit in the past by legends, like some spots from Clayton Villa in past
Oh
movies.
yeah, Sean
Yeah,
Jordan.
Sean Jordan, some spots I know, Ahmet, and a bunch of guys have
Yeah,
hit.
I wanted to hit that elbow to quad kink because of the Sean J shot in Mutiny.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because I know like what were your thoughts going into those spots, especially knowing your buddies with those guys, them, knowing the history of those spots, and knowing
Yeah,
the battle it takes.
dude, I had such a fun time. I mean, going into last year, um, I kind of had a mindset outside of just street, but it's hard to get clips in that December January window when you're talking about POW stuff.
Hmm.
Um, some of that's just due to there's just not enough snow yet, right? Like it's too early in the year for enough snowfall to be out there.
Hmm.
With that being said, often if there is enough snow, the snow conditions can be pretty dangerous earlier that time in the year. It takes more and more snow for those weak layers to settle down, and the layers that you're scared of and avalanche terrain and stuff like that often tends to be more apparent that early in the year, sitting on some of the early bad layers that might have fallen in the fall, stuff like that. So I'm always kind of figuring out a way, like, all right, how do I make use of January or December? We went to Japan one year, which was awesome for sure. That place definitely goes off in January. Um, but then I'd also want to hit some street for a number of years. Obviously that takes a big crew as well, right? And with us kind of building our own thing, I'm like, we don't already just have a crew that has all the gear, lights, a winch, the whole 9 yards.
Mm.
But either way, me and Cody LaPlante, and then at the end of the trip, Cody Wilderay, we all talked and we're like, dude, should we just go to Minnesota tomorrow? And everybody's just like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. So we booked tickets. we got out there, got everything lined up. Had a lot of help from a bunch of local people, Adam Peterson, Matt Wunderlich, um, Brandon Husak, just a bunch of like unreal, really sick people from out in the Midwest that
Yeah.
we couldn't have done that without. But
Yeah, Brendan has filmed some classic clips from Minnesota throughout the years.
yeah, absolute legend. I mean, used to do a ton of stuff with Armada and so many clips with like Hornbeck and Ahmet and
Yeah. I think one clip that people all have in mind, well, or will have in mind, is Phil doing a lip on
yeah,
to a
yeah,
double nose press, nose
yeah.
blunt.
That's on the Prior Lake Blue Quad King.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's him filming.
Yeah, it is. That spot's sick. I actually hit that one this year.
Oh,
But again, knowing I was hitting a classic, right? It's like you can't just step up to that and do like a back swap, you know what I mean?
there's some pressure at least. You're not
Yeah,
you know
for
that you're
sure.
stepping up to something.
Yeah, but like going to Minnesota, right? Like you're going to like one of the meccas of street and snowboard skiing in the world, you know, and while there's plenty of new spots there, there's also like so many classic spots. And that was in a sense why we went out there last year the first time. We just knew there's a lot of snow, there's a ton of spots, we can be efficient. So with me not having hit a street spot, especially haven't had a clip on one since like 2012 or something, I was, more in the mindset of like, we only are here for 2 weeks, maybe a little over 2 weeks. Let's just go to the place with the most rails and be efficient. I don't really care that we're hitting classics or not. I don't have any street clips, so like, I don't have like a standard to set of like, like a Phil does, for instance, or some of these icons, Wallish, Hornbeck, some of the guys who've had street parts for years, some of the most insane stuff. Like you bring yourself by having that much success and that many insane parts to like a standard that you're not kind of just going to hit like all the classics here and there, right? Like if you are, you're doing crazy stuff. Otherwise, you're finding cool new stuff, going to new zones.
Yeah.
And I would love to do that, but I haven't been in the street game for a long time, so I don't have the same knowledge that I do out in the backcountry out there. So last year was so fun, man. It was yeah, cold as shit. Um it was so like yeah, we just had such a fun time like stepping up to some of those. I really wanted to hit that elbow to quad, the red one that Sean J has a shot in Mutiny, and
Yeah.
quite a few other people. A lot of people have hit it after the elbow. There's definitely been a number of people ski and snowboard who hit it from the top. Um, I know, I think it was Brolf in the child labor movie. He had a shot on that last year. Um, but yeah, just a bunch of like definite classics. That one that Cody did the right lip to on. There's been a number of shots over the years from that. That rail was actually broken
Yeah.
way back, and the second down was like cut off after the first 2 feet. Um,
When I see that big green dub kink, I just think of old McChesney shots. I
yeah,
don't know if you
yeah,
remember. Like that's maybe
yeah.
2009 ish, 2008.
And over the recent years in um, Salute, I think Easy Panda does a Wally
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the Jersey barrier
Right.
and hits it. And then maybe it was also Broth or somebody in the child labor movie also did that. They wallied the Jersey barrier and hit that 2 movies ago. Um, but yeah, I mean, like driving around there, even just like for my first time, it's like you're in a museum of street skiing history and snowboarding. Like I'll like see spots and just be like, oh, like that's yeah, like and then a deep dive like last year and this year. I mean, probably watched if you like went to my YouTube history during this January or last January,
Yeah.
it's like 150 videos of like ski and snowboard street stuff from Minnesota and done a ton of movies, and I mean, just like deep diving, finding spots and like seeing who's done what where. And yeah,
Getting
I mean,
inspired.
that place is just iconic, right? So I tried to go on another trip um, to somewhere else this year, but my flights got canceled a few days in a row because of a lot of snow in Colorado trying to get out. So I'd like to go some more places for sure to hit street, but with kind of the schedule that I've been setting up for my season, we're definitely focusing more on the POW stuff, especially for the second half of the year, the bigger chunk. Um, I'm kind of have this mindset of like just wanting to get some street clips that I'm hyped on,
Yeah.
um, to get a bit of a well-rounded segment. So January certainly is the month that delivers that for me, and December too, if possible. And Minnesota just works so far. So
Yeah.
definitely next year, got to switch it up. But with that being said, it's been yeah. I mean, if you're trying to be efficient, you're trying to get clips in a small amount of time. It's cold there. There's a ton of snow and so many features, right? And it's also same as the Quebec area, so definitely on the bucket list as well as Finland. And I don't know, man. I like you said, I've done quite a few slopestyle events, quite a few big air events, obviously a ton of half pipe events. Had some POW segments thus far, and going into last year, I'm like, you know, I mindfully stopped doing contests at a younger age than most because I wanted to focus on filming, and it was where my mindset was at. And just knowing that that's one of the main things kind of missing from my roster throughout my career, like, you know, I think some people would think it's crazy. Most people, as they're getting older, are doing the exact opposite. But it's the one thing I felt like I was missing, and I just wanted to prove to the people that I can do that.
Yeah, that's cool because there's two fronts to it. One is we've been seeing rail clips from you for ages, and it's always so sick. Every time I was like, dude, I wish you would do more or go in the streets. So it's
Yeah,
nice that you actually did it because we don't think of pipe skiers as good rail skiers necessarily.
yeah.
That's not part of the job.
Some of them don't even hit rails.
Yeah, but you're not that guy. And then there's the other side where it's kind of a goat move, where in like the goat discussions on my side, I always think like if you want to get into the goat discussions, you got to do everything.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't be in it if you're just a street skier or if you're just a pipe skier. To me, goats are like Sammy.
Yeah, yeah, for
You know,
sure.
he's won big airs, slope style. He's won real ski. He's done street. Like people might not remember, but he was doing crazy street stuff.
Yeah,
And he goes in Alaska, like he does it all. That's like,
yeah,
but so it's cool to see you that we know you can do it. We've seen the rail clips. You're good, but then it's nice that there's the difference between knowing it and actually going out there and putting yourself out there.
yeah. No, dude. I mean, yeah, it's been sick. It's definitely been a mental battle. I mean, I think just this trip alone we did this year, there was probably three different spots that I was at for 2 days, and you're like 200 tries in, like contemplating what the hell you're doing with your life. But when you get the clip, it's damn worth it. And it's also depending on what you're hitting. Like, yeah, it's in the streets, and yeah, it's definitely a lot higher risk and it's harder. But I've been skiing rails my whole life, so when it comes
Hmm.
to rail stuff hitting street, versus that of a big gap or a wall to tranny or all kinds of various things you could hit, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to rails, it's definitely something I've felt like feel like relatively comfortable.
Hmm.
Obviously, that goes out the window when you're hitting something massive, high risk. But I guess what I'm getting at is relative to that of kind of adapting to the backcountry, as it is such a massive place and you're in Mother Nature's hands, and takes a lot of wisdom and learning throughout the years to build the confidence up. And it's still something I struggle with, trying to kind of step up to something and knowing your line, and it just takes a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
And by no means am I saying that street skiing is easy, but what I'm getting at is when it comes to like a quad kink, I've been riding rails for, 25 years.
Hmm.
So certainly not easy, but in a kind of weird sense can be comforting.
Yeah. But I guess it depends on the type of spot, because
Yeah.
if it's a forking, if it's a safe forking, nothing in the way, nothing in the landing, nothing
Yeah,
aside,
yeah. Like,
it's just a classic rail. But
yeah.
sometimes it's what I find is your your skill level is important. Like if you go in the streets, you need to be good, or it's not a good idea for anyone. But once you're there, the confidence level in what you're about to do needs to be at 100%, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like if you fall on that side, there's a rock, and if you fall early, there's a fence, and
Yeah.
you need to like have a clear mind and be confident, or else like
Yeah. Could go very wrong. And definitely like a disclaimer there. I definitely haven't done some of the gnarliest stuff in the streets. So that's kind of just like a little look into my mentality, I guess would be
yeah.
the way I'd put it. Like when it comes to very big, high risk stuff, like for sure you're going to be scared shitless. But depending on the feature, there is just kind of some sort of um, like, like I said, I guess comfortability, but also like something that you're slightly used to at times, right? Where
As you said,
like
you've been
just
hitting rails for 20 years.
yeah, throughout the course of even just the last 4 years that I've like full time been trying to progress in the backcountry, I just it's definitely like a constant struggle that I deal with is just building that confidence up over the years, and
Hmm.
just growing your knowledge and snow safety and knowing when to go on something big and when not to. And then just the tale as old as time of knowing where you are, right? Like that's something a lot of people as they get into the backcountry will struggle with, and I struggle with, is standing at the bottom of something, looking up and picking your line,
Mm,
and then getting to the top and knowing where the hell you are. You can take as many photos as you want. You can have so many little indicators of, all right, I'm dropping next to that tree and I'm turning around this rock and then that cliff is here. And as much as you try, you get to the top and you are scared out of your mind and you have no clue where you are.
damn.
And spending time, especially the year we filmed Good Luck with somebody like Chris Logan, for instance, who has just so many hours and years out there and so much experience and wisdom. I mean, just being like a fly on the wall, watching him do his craft, I like can't even tell you how mind blowing it is to just watch him and the confidence he has in line choice and like picking something and not second guessing himself and just dropping in and knowing that like that's his exact takeoff.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to what I was saying about street, of like having a certain level of confidence in yourself and self trust. That like, because I guess it's the same thing for backcountry. Once you go in a line, it's not time to doubt yourself. You gotta go all in.
Yeah, I've definitely had some like screaming battles within myself just at the top of a ridge, like so frustrated. I like, what the fuck? Like, I'm supposed to be able to do this, and I just like, I don't know where the fuck I am. Like, what is
Yeah, it's more mental than anything else.
very much, like, that for the most part, like, you have the skill to do a lot of it with time and experience out there, like landing and snow like that and different stuff, comes with its own battles, but it's a mental struggle and it just takes a lot of time out there, it's mother nature, it's huge. But whether you're riding street or pow, confidence, I mean, or park or half pipe, right? Like if you don't have confidence in yourself, it's going to be hard to drop in and like do exactly what you're trying to do.
Because I'm guessing there's a lot of things that you must have learned from pipe that you can apply. Because man, the tricks you were doing in pipe, like those dub alley oops. What was the biggest one you did? Like dub alley oop 10 or 12? And
10 in the pipe, yeah.
yeah, like those, like pipe is a great analogy with street, where you're just a bit off and you're gonna eat shit.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
you still got to commit 100%. You can't commit half. You can half-ass it.
Oh yeah. It's yeah, definitely, man. I mean,
Do you like put back your pipe mentality sometimes to like put you in the zone of like committing to something?
I don't know if I'd necessarily like kind of factor one into the other, right? But I think it's more of a subconscious thing, like ways that you learn to deal without pressure, or ways that you learn to deal with pressure throughout competing are things that you can factor into dropping into a big street spot or a line or other factors in life, right? Like there's uh there's a lot to be said about mental strength throughout any competitive sport, especially a lot of the stuff we're doing, I'd say, as it pertains to a lot of athletes having a similar skill level and having the potential to do the same tricks, right? Like, so a lot of people at the top in slopestyle, big air, and half pipe that have the ability to do the same runs as each other, for instance,
Yeah.
but there's a very few selection in each of those categories that have the mental strength to do it when it needs to be done, you know, and can step up to amounting to pressure and the butterflies at the top and things like that. It's I don't know. It's the yeah. I've heard somebody say once that pressure is a privilege because not everybody on any given day has the pressure to give them butterflies like that.
Yeah.
And while I think that is a very true statement, in the moment it can be the absolute worst feeling, and there's nowhere you'd rather not be than at the top of that contest about to drop in or at the top of a line, just because the butterflies and the legs are shaking and you almost like it's almost a terrible feeling, but it's also, a feeling that you can only get by being in a situation like that. So I think that that circles back to that quote I've heard before for sure. It's pressure is definitely a privilege.
But it's a you've always seemed like someone who thrive off of that. Like there's some guys that we see at the top, and I know they're it's a bad stress. Like you see they're stiff. When every time I saw you, it's like relaxed, but checking out the iPod. Like you seem like
Yeah,
a guy who was like happy in that, or not happy, but just like feeding off
yeah.
of it positively.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said that I didn't thrive with it, right? But internally, you definitely just kind of feel like, oh my God, I can't wait till this run is over, and then I'm like have a calm feeling, and I'm not feeling like I don't know so much. I'm a very mellow person, very calm minded, and I'd like to think that the mentality I always had doing contests like that is at the top trying to use there's so much energy it feels like built up from that pressure and that nervousness at the top of an event, and trying to basically condense that into energy that you're going to use to ski with, right?
Hmm.
um, there's never anything I specifically did at the top. It was usually pretty quiet. Everybody deals with pressure in different ways. Some people like to be a little more vocal, joking around. Maybe that helps them calm down a little bit. Um, I was usually fairly quiet, not super serious, but kind of just if I could just take a deep breath and calm down a little bit, I felt that it would help. And then pretty much music is the one thing that I'd certainly rely on to just kind of take me into kind of my own world.
Yeah, in a lot of sports, you hear team sports. Let's say you hear some coaches say like, "Don't get too high, don't get too low. Like when you lose, don't
Yeah,
get too low. When you win, don't get too high, and just like stay even." You
yeah,
seem like that
definitely.
type of guy. Like the highest is like Henrik barking, and then the lowest is some other guys that might be super stiff. You always
Yeah,
seem like
yeah.
just level headed.
Yeah, I mean, uh, kind of out of my control. I guess that comes down to a personality thing. But
Yeah, yeah,
I suppose if I look back, definitely that was always the goal for sure. I think there's a lot of people in professional sports, especially at the top level, that would say they've been told and they've been trying to always be in the moment and be present. If you're thinking about what is going to happen if you land this or what happened before this moment, these are factors that are irrelevant. They should be trying to bring everything into being present, I think, is a mindset that a lot of kind of top level professional athletes have definitely shared the mentality of. And I think it's a good one as an athlete to try and live by.
yeah. And I think that that's probably something that you can bring into your POW and street missions because it's the same thing. Like, let's say you're hiking a street rail. There's really no point of thinking too far ahead of yourself. It's
Yeah, yeah.
you might get it this try or in 28 tries. It's
Yeah, for sure, man. I think riding, like, just with the pure amount of tries it takes hitting street spots, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't times when I was like, motivation to try and land at that time was like how good it will feel to just lay down on my back and like have a snack or something. I don't know,
yeah,
kind of, but that's a very extreme level that doesn't necessarily come in a in a competitive setting, right?
yeah,
And it's all for you. Like that's the big difference that I really do admire about what my seasons and career has been based around the past 4 years. Every clip you're trying to get, it's all for you. If you don't want it bad enough, like you're probably not going to do it. When you're doing an event, like maybe there's personal goals that it is for you for sure, and I'd say there's a lot of times that it was, but ultimately, you're skiing so that that person in the judging booth can decide on how good it was.
yeah. There's a bunch of external pressures.
Yeah, definitely, and there still is like trying to film for a part, I want to put out like the best stuff I can to make sure I'm staying relevant, hopefully, and having the support from sponsors and giving them content deliverables that they're asking for, and maybe posting enough, which I'm usually kind of bad at.
In comps, there's a timely manner, or you have 3 runs. You
Yeah,
do your
yeah,
best, and after that, whatever happened. Whereas in the
yeah,
streets or POW also, but maybe POW it's different since you want to get that nice snow shot. But let's say in the
yeah,
streets,
yeah,
you can't get the trick, and then it's like, well, was it good enough for you?
yeah.
Because if you want to
Uh,
do it better, you can hike up. It's your call.
I deal with that a little too much, I'd say.
Yeah.
Sometimes like way too much of a perfectionist, which I
Hmm.
actually listened to Frank April the other day on the bomb hole.
Yeah. Frank was a legend snowboarder from Quebec.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolute beast. And they were talking about like the Quebec snowboard like mentality, and that like they specifically were the ones that like didn't let even the slightest bit of a not perfect trick pass.
Yeah.
Like him talking with like Chris Grenier, obviously, who's hosting it, who's filmed a lot with him. He's like, dude, like you Quebec guys, I mean, like, god damn, like I do the perfect, like best like switchback two onto a rail that I've ever done. But like because my board was like slightly a degree off of perfect backboard slide, like you'd be like, no, no, like you got to keep doing that. That's not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see it if you watch like just in recent years. Go watch the real skis of Quebecers. Go watch
Oh
Cassabon,
yeah,
ABM, JF Fool, and Emile Bergeron. It's like you see that there was some specificity into like, will this make the cut? Um,
definitely, dude. I kind of struggle with it a little too much at times. It's led me to like definitely get hurt a few times because I'm like trying so hard to get it even better and better.
yeah, it's a balance of not pushing too much and on my end as a filmer, I tend to be pushy, but it's because I've seen so many times guys be like, "Yeah, that was the good one,"
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then talk, and then editing in the summer, and they're like bummed because, "Oh, I wish I could have done it better." Like
yeah,
it's like,
for
well,
sure.
like sometimes I say, I'm seeing the future right now, and I'm seeing you in July being pissed, so maybe it's
Yeah,
worth it to go again.
yeah, we've been saying that a lot. We've been that's been our quote this year a lot. We're like, "You're gonna like that one in the fall," or
Yeah,
little things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a balance. Like being too much of a perfectionist could definitely sometimes lead to possible injuries and certain different stuff. But with that being said, like I I just have a personal standard, and if it's like not as good as I wanted it, it's I just want to keep going. But definitely certain times you got to just be like, all right, like this is I'm getting dizzy. I'm gonna like hurt myself if I keep going for this anymore.
yeah. Or as you were saying with the competition schedule, sometimes not doing as much comps to keep your energy. Well, it's the same for filming, where might be okay to take a loss so you stay healthy and can get a banger in a week because you never
Yeah,
know
yeah, for sure,
what's
for
coming
sure.
after. Yeah, you got to be wise.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But it's yeah, no matter what, it's been damn fun. I'll tell you, just like getting out in the street. It's been sick. I mean, I love the vibe of it. It's like from like filming so much POW over the years, just the change of scenery of like being in the car with the boys,
Hmm.
go stop at Chipotle at 10 p.m. and grab a little dinner after a spot and then go to another spot. You know, it's like it's long days hitting street if you're kind of trying to balance like depends what program you're on, right? Like if you're kind of more on the day spot program and you're trying that, which is sick. Like I definitely like that if you can. But then kind of if you're on the night spot program, you know, it's hard to be on the day spot program.
Doing night spots is so much more stuff that you have to think about with the lights and the generator and the cords and everything, and planning
Yeah.
your angle according to lights and all that. Maybe I'm just an old grumpy guy, but and there's the fact that if you do a spot at night, you're fucking up your whole schedule for the day after. Like you're gonna wake up at noon because you're too tired. Like I like the get up, get to the spot at 8 in the morning, get your shot, go eat, repeat.
Yeah, definitely, dude. That's Kim had some good wisdom coming into this year, like me going on a
Yeah,
trip with him this year. And, you know, Kim has a laundry list of street parts, like absolute veteran out there.
yeah.
And, like, yeah, I've been filming for a good bit for sure, but, like, definitely haven't been hitting street for a long time. So I definitely, like, let his input come in more so than, you know, me taking over just like what maybe I'm trying to hit or something because he knows a little more, right? And he's definitely trying to get on the day spot program, and I was like, "All right, word, yeah,
That's your equivalent of Chris Logan in the POW.
yeah, yeah." He was kind of just voice of reason sometimes too, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's true, that's true." I'm like, "Fuck, dude, I've been hitting this rail for 2 days, like 200 plus tries." He's like, "Yeah, I've hit a few for like 4 days," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, no, I'll just." That checks out, but we got more on the day spot program for sure, and the only reason like a night spot setup in somewhere like Minnesota can work better is like a lot of spots out there, school spots, different stuff like that, right? And you're limited to like those spots only being weekend spots.
Yeah.
So obviously those are the few times that like night spots become definitely the only option and you got to go with it. But yeah, it's definitely more work. Angles are a little harder.
You mentioned it. I'm branching off, but you mentioned it quickly, and I had to talk about it. I was looking at all your resume, and it's as you were saying, half pipe, half pipe, half pipe. In your FIS resume, there's one slope style comp where
Yeah.
you finish fourth, and you
Yeah.
did the infamous first switch 18 in a slope comp.
Yeah.
Did you ever want to do some more slope, like because you're, as I said like 5 minutes ago, you're super good all around skier. Was there ever a time where you were like, maybe I should do more slope comps?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I actually would say I probably wanted to do them even more than I ever wanted to do half pipe. Um, at that point, I was 16. I was still kind of getting some spots into both. I was doing Aspen Open. I did got a spot in that World Cup in Mammoth. Um, that day, I'm pretty sure that day might have been pipe and slope in the same day,
Damn.
and I did that one there, and I think I did better in pipe, or I did better in slope that day than pipe.
Yeah, you got fifth in half pipe and fourth in slopestyle.
Yeah, and I did the switch 18 that day in slopestyle, and then I did dub 14 that day in pipe, which I think was also the first one,
Damn.
at least in a contest. Um, it was a pretty sick weekend, actually. It was pretty dope, but I was still doing, I did WSI either, I think that year also for pipe, slope, and big air. Um, and then continued over the years to do a lot of big air events, like quite a few city big airs. I did Yoon Olsen Invitational a few times, um, quite a few other ones, and ultimately just like with the where contests were going and the level it was at, just really kind of have to, yeah, if you didn't already have a pretty full schedule, especially with me wanting to just kind of go do other stuff too on my free time, doing the whole thing was just pretty aggressive and things were going well for me. And
Yeah, there's always a limit to what you can do.
yeah, for sure. So actually, there was later on though, there was a time that I was kind of gonna fully try and just switch over and stop riding half pipe. That
Really?
would have been around 2018 after the Olympics in South Korea.
Right.
That summer, I went down to New Zealand and I did it was called a Continental Cup, kind of like World Cup style or like FIS event, but like a rev tour, like lower level to try and get some points. And I got second at that event, um, which I think got me enough points to maybe get a start in a World Cup in the US the next season in 2019. Because the US World Cups, they get 8 spots, I think. And usually World Cups are only like 4 or something in countries that are not your own.
Yeah.
Um, so I was kind of trying to that year, like did that summer of 2018 and then 2019. My plan was basically do X Games and do tour for halfpipe in the 18-19 season, and then I would maybe do like a rev tour for slopestyle to try and get even some more points, and hopefully get like a start at a slopestyle World Cup, along with a film project I was lining up to try and do that year. And then that December of 18 at Do Tour, that was the year I broke both my heels. So then
God damn.
obviously wasn't able to kind of make that push that year. So missed that whole season, the 2019 season, the first, like I said, first and only season I've ever missed. Yeah, super shitty. And then coming into that next year was when I really just didn't have any plans to do any contests on my mind and wanted to fully focus on trying to get a film project started. So that was our first movie that was, yeah, just called Deviate, was that year, the 2019-20 season.
Yeah. So when you came back from that injury, you were just like, yeah, I gave enough to the comp side, ready to move on.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I mean, I hadn't really fully decided at that point yet. Um, but with that being such a significant injury, I mean, yeah, I broke both heels and both navicular bones, like on top of your ankle at the same time. I was in a wheelchair for like 4 months. The recovery was like a year, and I've had 7 surgeries on my ankles throughout that whole period up to right now. Um, so coming into that next year, I mean, that was pretty life changing injury, and I definitely knew that like being out riding POW was kind of more the speed I wanted to get back into. Um, it's something I had already been wanting to do for a while, but certainly that year, like icy half pipe landing low or something was the last thing I was really trying to do. Um, so we filmed that whole year, and I mean that movie was super fun to make. Like, yeah, just some like very low pressure, just first year kind of making something. Jossie and I linked together. Um, our agent Michael Spencer had a kind of let us both know that we're attempting to do similar things. He was coming off of a pretty bad shoulder injury that previous year too. Um, so that's kind of how it all started. Just like both him and I had similar intentions and got linked together through. We had the same agent at the time, and after filming that movie that whole year and how fun that was, and also how much work it took, like kind of trying to wrap my head around continuing to like put out a full segment and focus a year on it. Plus, if I was gonna transition into trying to ride slope style, it would take a lot in the sense of like you don't just have invites to the big events and can just do a few of them. I'd have to kind of go around and grind out some rev tours and some smaller events to try and get points. And where I was at, I was like already just not loving comp skiing at the time, especially half pipe for me. I mean, it's given me so much, and I definitely like enjoy riding half pipe. But at the point that I was at, and like my mental state going into that next year, up until that point, the last few years riding half pipe, I was just really not enjoying it and feeling like I wasn't kind of skiing for myself, and it just got really stagnant to me, like traveling around the world to these beautiful places to ride the same half pipe confined between these two walls. And there's not as many people that do half pipe. You're kind of with the same small group of people, and half pipe more than anything is very much like the most specialized kind of high level sport, like national team seeming. Not that some of the other um like not that big air and slopestyle haven't become pretty aggressive in that manner, but half pipe has just always seemed very specialized. And
Yeah, it is the most specialized
yeah,
out of them all.
and ultimately at the end of the day, I always rode half pipe, and it was something that I succeeded in, but it certainly was not my favorite thing to ride by any means. I just happened to be doing pretty good at it, and I did enjoy riding it. Um, but just the whole vibe around it and the culture and this sense that I was kind of just doing it to keep doing it because it was allegedly my thing.
Allegedly, your thing, like meaning that, but you were successful, but it's not as if it was the thing that was turning you on the most.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely a half pipe skier for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, I
Yeah,
100%, but I never felt like I was only a half pipe skier, nor did I
right.
ever want to be put in that bubble. And I always made a very strong effort throughout the years to make sure I wasn't known as that, with trying to get out and film small little projects when I could, mostly riding park. And the only time I ever rode half pipe was at the training for the event and at the event. So, I had a lot of other intentions and loves. And another big factor that came into that too was had a lot of inspiration from Sammy Carlson, I'd say. He kind of drifted away from everything in the contest scene at a fairly young age.
Yeah.
Obviously, immaculate timing too, because that's when they were doing real ski or real snow in the backcountry. So he could transition right over to that, and he wreaked havoc.
Yeah. And it's not as if he was out of his league in terms of comps. He could have stayed there and
No, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and that was yeah, big inspiration for me. Obviously, like that year coming off of having the injury to my heels, like went to won like a Grand Prix that year before, podiumed at X Games, went to the Olympics that year. like definitely still was feeling like I could win and do everything I need to do in that. But yeah, a lot of inspiration from watching the likes of like Sammy and Sage Kotzenberg as well. Just really listening to their heart and knowing that like they want to go thrive and succeed in something and do it when they're still at the top level of kind of the contest scene that they had been in. And I think that's really admirable because it's a pretty big risk to take. But also, I've never wanted to kind of just keep doing these contests and kind of slowly start to do shittier and shittier. And then you're 30 and you're not even making finals. And then you give it a shot like, oh, yeah, guess I'll try and ride some POW now because it's what people do
Yeah.
and do it kind of half ass. Like, I very much had this mentality of like, I want to switch over to this other avenue and I want to like try and be the best at it and do it at a young age and try and be yeah, somebody who yeah makes an impact out there. So that was kind of the mindset I had, which was cool to see Sammy and Sage kind of take that path and definitely like give me inspiration to know that making this move is something that's realistic.
Kudos to you for doing that because, as you're saying, it's you talked about being risky. It's not. It wasn't the safe move. Let's say the safe bet would have been to just keep going what you've always done. And
Yeah, it's just, I know I could do well and keep doing half pipe contests and but if it's not what I love and not like lacking this feeling of skiing for my self gratification and things that come along with that, it's you're going to ski your best and do your best when you're doing what you want to be doing and doing something that you love.
yeah,
And a lot of times success and everything going well for you comes when you're enjoying what you're doing, right? So that was yeah, kind of my mindset going in and never made any announcement that I was going to stop doing contests or anything because I just also was like, I'm not retiring from anything. Like, I'm still trying to ski as a professional at the top level, just in a different avenue. So, any quote unquote like retirement posts, I just feel like didn't, wasn't something I cared to do. I felt like there's no retirement involved.
yeah. Because like if they invite you to Knuckle Huck next year, you're still gonna
Yeah,
go and
I'll do
compete.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have something I wanted to have your opinion on. You touched on it just right now. We're in 2023, so it's been 5 seasons since your last halfpipe comp. We talked a bit about it being super specialized and all of that. Um, you grew up, as you were saying before in the podcast, you were kind of in between two generations, like between the Olympics national team generation and between, let's say, the the, the legends like Tanner, Simon, Candy, and all those guys. Um, what's your take on the future of pipe skiing? Maybe I'll give you a couple pointers that I see as an outsider, as someone who's not a pipe skier, but I see maybe less um how would you say, less newcomers maybe than other disciplines,
Yeah.
less like again, personal take, less pipes in Canada, whereas 15 years ago there would be dozens of pipes. Now I think there's one in Quebec, and then the other one I need to drive 30 hours to go to Calgary. So it's harder to get into pipe.
Yeah.
um, and then it doesn't take into the consideration the fact that it's highly specialized, that it's gnarly. um, it seems like for a lot of time pipe was like hyped for the progression, like every year you would see new tricks and the level getting bigger, or it was like athletes, like you're watching Tanner or you're watching Torin. It seems like in the recent years there's kind of a, I don't know, not trying to be harsh, because if I still watch pipe it's incredible, but like it seems like there's a little something that's missing right now.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your take on maybe the current state of pipe skiing, or where do you see it headed? Because with slope style it seems as if it's always renewing in a certain way, because the courses are always changing. So,
Yeah.
and they're doing some stuff like in X Games, they're doing shark fins to just spice it up a bit. And as you said, you're always skiing the same pipe, so everything. I know that was a loaded question, but just curious to have your thought now that you're out of it, looking back on it.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of similar opinions as you do, actually, in the sense of like, I think it'd be harsh to say it's dying
Hmm.
entirely, right? Like, there's definitely still a very relevant top level and big events for it. Um, but as far as newcomers, yeah, it's extremely unattainable these days. And it'd be unfair to say slopestyle isn't. Like jumps and rails are very attainable to find and have at your local mountain, but the level of slopestyle is almost seems unattainable to be a 10-year-old kid.
Hmm.
Like, all right, I got to get both switch triple 18s down by next year, you know? Um, but literally just getting into half pipe, it's so it's hard to even explain. It's almost, I wouldn't say privilege, because the privilege you have to ride some of the private ones come with being at the top level.
Hmm.
But how do you get to the top level if there's not a public one around to even learn on, right?
Yeah.
I think the field's always been smaller in half pipe. Um, and in one sense, it's a way that you could actually succeed quicker if you want to get into half pipe. You have less kids to battle with.
You're
But
you're going to make me ask you about Liswani if you keep in that direction.
I mean, it's just true. Like, if you go to like a World Cup slope style, there's like 140 people in the field on the qualifying day. In half pipe, you're gonna have 50 at the very most. So just as like a rule of thumb, there's just less people to do it because it is pretty gnarly, it's pretty specialized. But then in this area specifically, it's just not very attainable. Like, as far as public half pipes go around the world, there's one in Copper, there's one in Aspen, there's one in Mammoth. I don't know if Lax has a full size one that's public or not. Maybe uh, Calgary, and then New Zealand is like kind of public, kind of private. It depends. But a lot of these half pipes around the world, like Mount Hood in the summer now, is like a full paid private camp. You can't go in there at all. And if you do, you're gonna get chased down, and like Buddy's gonna try and like, I don't even know, like it's pretty aggressive up
Yeah.
there in Oregon
Ask
in
you
the
for
summer
your
now with the half pipe.
accreditation or certification.
Yeah, there's like Sauce Fe has a great half pipe, but that one's a full private camp. There's so many different ones like this. Like Kit Steinhorn in Austria builds a sick half pipe, but it's a full private camp. So there's a lot of these, like it's hard to just be a young kid and go to the hill and just like ride half pipe unless you specifically live in like Colorado, Mammoth, and it's definitely like it's um a rhythm, and um I don't know, it's something that you see for sure around the world, that anybody that is getting into half pipe are from these very few places around the world that do have them. So pretty constantly you're gonna have some new kids out of Colorado, maybe out of Mammoth, New Zealand, and then if you live around Calgary, or maybe you're on like one of the lower national teams and they're willing to travel out there to train half pipe, but it's a lot harder just to access in this day and age.
Yeah, well, you can definitely see it with the Canadian team, like Justin Doré, Mike Riddle, Noah Bowman, Simon D'Artois. They're all West Coast guys. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
for
never
sure.
been an East Coast guy doing pipe because
Yeah. And even the West Coast guys now, like, I mean, I don't know if you guys quite categorize Calgary as West Coast or Midwest.
yeah, I would,
Um,
I would.
yeah, like, Whistler used to have a great one too. They don't have a half pipe like that there now. So a lot harder to access. So yes, I see a lot less kids getting into it. And I don't know, it's like a tough thing. I don't watch a ton of it these days,
Hmm.
I do watch some events because there's, close friends of mine still competing that I like to watch. Um, but it's hard to say where the future of it goes, right? Like as the years go on, it feels like more half pipes exist less and less, and the ones that do are becoming more private and
Yeah.
specialized, where they try and run training camps and charge to even ski them. So accessibility seems like it's at an all-time low.
Yeah. Because there's a a side where you're like, is it going to be a kind of a bobsleigh thing where
Yeah, yeah,
you can only do it if you have the bobsleigh track in,
yeah,
or
for sure, man. Like skiing's already an expensive sport that's not entirely attainable to a lot of the population, and I'm be the first one to admit that. I know that very well.
mm,
And then you go to this added layer of half pipe skiing, and yeah, it's hard to imagine where it could go, right? Because a lot of like marketing and brands being involved are, a lot of times like trying to market to the people that are into that and might like to do it, right?
mhm,
Like people like to throw a football around, people like to go skateboard, so they like to watch skateboarding or maybe skateboarding contests. Very few people around the world that are like, oh, that looks, yeah, sick. I'm gonna go ride my local half pipe. Oh wait, we don't have one, and there's not one within a 500-mile radius.
because that's the thing. There was a lot of attention. Let's say if we talk about old stuff for a minute,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, Tanner and Simon brought a lot of attention to pipe skiing,
yeah, for
but
sure.
they were also doing everything else. They were skiers with big S. Like
Yeah,
they were doing
definitely.
also big air and slopestyle and movies. So pipe was just a part of the bigger thing, which was skiing being cool and skiing as a whole. And now there's a lot of pipe skiers, let's say, because we're talking about that subject, that benefit with like sponsors and attention from that. But it's kind of a weird game. Like you're if you're only doing that, then
Yeah,
you're getting attention that was brought, let's say, from Tanner, but Tanner and all that generation that were doing multiple stuff, but now you're not doing multiple stuff.
yeah, definitely. And there's definitely a few kids that like I really see out there right now that especially being like even younger generation that I am that are keeping it pretty real, which is super dope. Like obviously Burke Irving is like a little brother to me.
Hmm.
Um and I love how much he likes to get out and try and film and kind of not keeping himself closed in a bubble of just half pipe skiing, right? I
Yeah,
think Hunter Hess is an amazing example of that. One of the only other people I know of at all that rides half pipe that's hitting street rails.
yeah.
Um, Gotta slap big respect on that.
Was that inspiring you? Talking about Hunter, the movie project you released, where there was pipe, there was street, there was booters. That was like something I'd see you doing, kind of a mix of it all.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I think, and I just love seeing that coming from just legacy and like history of free skiing example, right? Like I think that it's extremely admirable. And when you're talking about when we talked about the grind of contest versus skiing, there's those few people that are still putting in the effort, like that, for instance, like Henrik would be like the prodigy of the one who's still been able to do that, even at an older age, like
Hmm.
still just making people almost like I don't know, look like they can't handle it. It's almost kind of funny.
Making everyone else look lazy.
Yeah, like people will have the excuse that they don't have time, and you're like, well, this dude's kind of like winning everything, and he's doing this. So like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, maybe just like work harder. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like,
Same
and if
thing
you
with
don't want
A
it,
Hall.
yeah. And A Hall, great example. Colby's been filming a ton this year for this project. Um, I know Mac Forehand has been out on a trip recently with the faction team. He did a Japan trip and they did somewhere else on the sleds. So super cool to see him getting out there as well. And I think a lot of that too comes to like your love and passion for the sport
Hmm.
and not just how much you like to do it, for instance, but like what what you like about it, right? Like you feel that it's important to have a segment, and that's something that brings value to you, and maybe something that you think your peers would respect and the people that you look up to, and just this long-standing kind of, yeah, I always had the feeling throughout my career of like wanting to be respected by different realms of the sport, and I never just wanted to be the comp skier guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the only way to do that is to prove that you care enough and put the work in. And yeah, seeing those handful of people who are doing that, it's just like those are the things you see where, people might kind of, you know, understandably chirp like some of the older heads on just how some of the sport is right now, and with the national teams and Olympics and stuff like that. But then you have some of these kids that are at the top level, like, I'll just give those three as an example:
Yeah.
Colby, A Hall, and Mac. And they're like, winning at all the big contests. And they're putting in like a huge effort to go out and
Yeah.
get clips. And Cody LaPlante, another great example of that, which I respect a ton for him wanting to do that. And, even more kids like Ferdinand Dahl and Ed Joy, Danny Bacher. Um, it just gives you like, yeah, kind of brings joy to your heart seeing like this, much younger generation. Like Danny B is like 17, and having that mentality, you're like, this is just so sick. These are people that like really care about free skiing as a culture, and like putting a video part out isn't about like, hey, look what I did the best this year. It's almost like a respect thing of like people who've done it know how hard you work to do it. And especially seeing somebody who's doing contests doing it, you're like, you could just kind of be lazy and you could go sit at home at the end of the season and just ride some park and do whatever, kind of just chill because you have no contests to do. Maybe go to a training camp. But yeah, you see that stuff, and that's what gets me hyped. So with slopestyle and especially half pipe on the original question in mind, I definitely do see a lot of good stuff in the future of it still,
Yeah.
with people like that. But yeah, half pipe's a tough one, right? It's very specialized, and I think there's some sick runs going down still, and yeah, definitely a lot of talent. But I think it takes people to lead by example, and I'd like to hope that I can play a role in that. And I'd also like to hope that the likes of like Burke Irving and Hunter Hess, and I think I've seen Nico Porteous this year out working on a project. Granted, he's not doing a bunch of pipe events this year because he's coming off of a knee injury, but I think that kind of stuff helps. Um, I guess bring not even necessarily attention, but kind of like a respect and almost you know maybe a view that a young kid could see, like, oh, if I do half pipe, I can do it all still.
Yeah. And it's good to see, as you said, all those young guys from the new generation doing that, because skiing is led by the pros. Like it's not as if Armada, or maybe it isn't. Tell me, but it's not as if Armada tells you, "Hey, Torin, that's what you're going to do this year."
No,
It's more
no,
like
it's definitely.
you guys lead with what you want to do and what you think would be cool, and then it all trickles down from there.
Yeah, for sure. You're able to like dictate what you want to portray, and I wouldn't use the word influence because you know, not trying to be an influencer, but I'd hopefully, if it was ever in a social media realm, be described as, the goal is to be an inspirer
Yeah,
rather than an influencer. So
inspired.
just yeah, not my favorite word because I don't really know what they're influencing, but
Yeah,
um
I agree.
yeah, I just think it's sick to see. I think I really admire that you see like a lot of that younger generation out there that has that like respect and love for this legacy and culture of free skiing, and wanting to put out a part because they want to put out a part, and like they feel like that's something that's the same way I feel like is important, and something important to have in like your repertoire, and like showing that you can do it. And it's not easy, and I don't think every kid who's doing contests could do it. In a world where there is a lot of stuff that I don't always love within our sport, there's also, I think, the pros and the good stuff happening outweigh maybe some of the cons of things that I don't necessarily love to watch.
Yeah.
So I think, that's something that everybody's always got to kind of keep in mind, is you can watch as much of the stuff you like as you want to, and as little of the stuff that you don't like as you want to. I think there's so many different avenues that I see a lot of hope for everything, which is a little outside of the realm of the original question, but it's just a bit of my opinion on
Yeah.
kind of the sport as a whole, and some of the sick stuff that I think is going on at the moment.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. I know Edward's been filming with Daniel in
Yeah,
Quebec, so
so
I'm
sick.
hyped to see that. A lot of times people are wondering what freeski culture really is, because snowboarding is its own thing,
Yeah,
and with skiing there's always that complex of being part of a broader thing with ski racing and mogul skiing and aerials, and like where does freeski stand, where like is it its own thing. And I feel like that is keeping free skiing alive, or like what free skiing is, having your generation and the generation of Henrik, that generation approximately, bridging the gap between the first ones like JP Auclair, Tanner,
yeah,
to the new generation like A Hall and Hunter-S, like keeping that way of portraying free skiing.
yeah, for sure, dude. And just looking at, while it can be a little bit overwhelming, if I'm going to be honest, just like the pure amount of projects being released every year in this day and age, which is, a product of all the platforms that we live and put stuff out on. But granted, even though there's a lot of them and it can get overwhelming at times, I just think it's sick that there is that many, because that's looking at how many projects are released and then factoring in how many people are spending the time to make them and how many tries every clip is taking to go into making them. You're like, in a small sport where sometimes you feel like maybe the rest of the world isn't understanding quite what you do, you're like looking at it, the amount of stuff that's being released, like, damn, there is a huge group of like-minded people that do this.
Yeah, the core of the sport is still alive and well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, some people might argue otherwise, but I think that there's more stuff coming out and more crews and like than there ever has been before, right? So I think you just follow the people of the stuff that you want to watch, and it's very easy to pick and choose what you want to see these days.
Yeah, it seems crazy because back in the days it was all in part of a big movie, so
Yeah, for sure.
you saw one movies, but the movie was 50 minutes long and there was 8 to 10 segments. So now it's all 8 to 10 minute projects, so it's like times 10 because it's all
Yeah,
spread out. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, but that's also strategic, right? Like, none of our movies, I'd never want to make anything that's, I guess, like 40 minutes would maybe be the longest I'd want to do of a project. And even that, like, our previous ones, the longest has been not even quite 30. Because I think that's just like keeping up with what's going on, right? Like, too long, you'll get bored. Too short, it's not considered a full project.
yeah,
But trying to find a good medium where, like, all different age levels will still hopefully be entertained throughout watching it, and it can still qualify in your eyes as a complete project.
yeah, totally agree. Um, I'm not sure we can get too deep into it because just that subject is worthy of an episode in itself. But I just wanted to do a shout out and tell people to go see it if they haven't watched it. But going into the episode, I rewatched your documentary Back to Life, and I just wanted to say big ups because that movie is incredible. Your story is incredible. Congrats on all the hardships you've gone through, and the perseverance you've shown, but also the final product. Like, anyone who hasn't seen Back to Life should go on the redbull.com, Google it, Red Bull Back to Life, 40 minutes. It's super good on a quality scale that we've rarely seen in skiing.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it was a cool one to make. I mean, nobody chooses how their life pans out, right? But
Yeah.
maybe sometimes people go through different things than others, and um, yeah, I linked up with Clayton Vila, and he helped me kind of bring that story from words to video and a reenactment. And yeah, it was fun to make, man. I never really, I guess I always thought the idea of doing a documentary might be cool, just in general. When you watch a good one, like I love watching documentaries. But with that being said, when a documentary is poorly made, I think it can be not too fun to watch. Not saying mine was perfect by any means, but that was kind of just my mentality of going into it. Um, and when you're talking about somebody telling a story about your life, it's kind of an uncomfortable situation to think of just a random person or production company um, just taking the reins and
Hmm.
essentially telling the story for you.
Yeah. And you're not necessarily the guy that's the most, I don't know what would be the best word, but you're someone who speaks a lot just through his skiing. You're not necessarily, doing a bunch of interviews everywhere. And it's a special place to learn more about you that, a lot of people don't know your backstory.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was, like I said, it was fun to make, and it was cool to have Clayton Vila as the director and helping just do all the research and bringing that to life. Like I was kind of touching on, just having somebody random maybe like take over for that. You could possibly just end up with one of these kind of cheesy sports documentaries. Was basically like my biggest fear. Like, you grew up, you got good at skiing, this happened, and then you got through it, and now you're here.
Yeah.
uh, like that formula could be told wrongly or done in a way that doesn't quite portray the emotions that you have about it, for instance. So doing that with Clayton Vila was yeah, man, it was really cool to make, and he's phenomenal at what he does. And past that, he's gone on to direct and tell a really cool story about a car accident that Colby Stevenson was in, and they did a reenactment and everything. And seeing like what Clayton can do, I guess it's just damn impressive. Like between him and the Stepped boys, and I mean him being part of Stepped as one of the original folks and being a huge part of all their movies. Granted, he does his stuff on his own outside of their business, but really cool with him and everybody involved with Step to see how far they've come from just making little videos with a handy cam back in Waterville Valley to yeah, the talent that they've really started to arise to out in California is super cool, man. So I appreciate the kind words on that one, and yeah, big thanks to Red Bull for helping make that one happen.
Yeah. Was that part of like maybe an inception of you wanting to get more into the film side? Seeing the whole process of making that film come to life, and then like, because there's not a big gap between like the release of that film and then you starting Deviate, maybe a couple of years.
Um, I don't know if I'd necessarily say it was. I mean, it was really fun to be a part of, and I was very hands on, obviously, throughout me and my family, kind of doing a lot of research and telling our story and interviews and a bunch of different stuff. But like I said, Clayton Vila and Matt Pothier and a bunch of other great people were very much on the production side of that alongside Red Bull Media House. So I'd say it was pretty cool. But previous to that, I had done a bit of like a season project with some guys from back home in Colorado, Vital Films, um, that we made a fun project that was like quite a bit of park stuff mixed with some contest stuff and then some backcountry stuff as well. It's since been taken offline because of music, unfortunately, but that one was really fun to make.
Okay, because you have the Days to Come videos. That's from a long time ago, but that was also with the Vital Films guys.
Yeah, that was with them as well. Someone that project that buttermilk, and yeah, they're super cool guys from that I've known forever back home. So I don't know if the documentary necessarily like gave me a direct sort of love to get into it, but I'd say it was a factor that had kind of already been going on. Like I've always been pretty into making my own stuff. Never had anybody do any of like my social media or anything. I love making little edits, and me and Aiden Sheehan back a long time ago, we did like a little like some like vlogs together and few segments with level one and one with matchstick when I was younger. Um, so I'd say a lot of that combined like was certainly a build up of like loving skiing for a part, and then also loving like being involved in like creating it, you know, on a hands-on background, that kind of stuff. So yeah, either way, man, it was fun to make for sure, and it was yeah, I can't thank Clayton enough for like really being somebody I know and trust really well to help kind of tell that story.
Yeah, and it's yeah, again, super great result. I think everyone should go watch it because it's something that, it's as if like the Red Bull side is not necessarily where people go to for skiing content, I feel like, but go there and watch it because it's definitely one for the history books, let's say, in terms of great documentaries in skiing and free skiing, certainly. Um, and there's one quote in the movie that you said that I had to pause because it hit me. I was like, oh, that's deep. Like you're talking about your first X Games podium, and you say, you're putting in context that like you're there, it's your first one, you're still a teenager, and you're saying, you got to go for broke because you are broke. I'm like, oh fuck, man. Like it's so crazy how y- there's so much pressure and everything going into being a 14, 15-year old going at X Games and being on that pro skier life. But then when you learn the backstory of like the whole family pressure, family struggles as a whole, props to you, dude.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I also think though at the same time, like at such a young age, and this is pretty apparent throughout a lot of different sports, you have a less battle scars, whether that be like shortcoming in an event where you almost could have won and you didn't, um, or physical scars, getting hurt, um, or as the years go on, if you do have a lot of success, right? Like um, you have even more pressure on yourself due to maybe what you've done before and what brands are supporting you and stuff like that, right? Like as you've become maybe a bigger name, I almost feel like there's even more pressure. Um, yeah, it's mind blowing being super young and being in that setting, but you really have nothing to lose. I think some of like the best scenarios you could be in at the top of a big event are when you're super young, because like you've never been there before, you have no, you know what I mean? Like it's the coolest thing ever, and if it goes well, sweet. If not, you're still hyped you made it to the X Games.
Yeah. Yeah. Your rise was unlike everything I've ever seen, or almost. Because especially these days, the level of competitions with kids coming up is so intense that like, you see people really making it to the top when they're 21, 22 sometimes, you know. And you had your big break. I don't think I had ever heard of you before that edit, but Armada released an edit of you joining the team, and it was
Yeah,
a cool story edit showing you going to New Zealand with the team. And that was kind of your big introduction to the world, where like everyone was like, okay, there's this kid, Torin Yater-Wallace. He's sick. He's on the Armada team. And then 4 months later, you win a medal at X Games. It was like super quick. Like, oh, you, here you are. But then a couple of months later, okay, you're one of the big dogs.
yeah, definitely happened quick for sure. It was a pretty crazy time. I mean, it's not entirely uncommon in these days, right? Like being young and winning an event or something
Yeah.
it happens pretty frequently for sure.
But I feel like it's more rare these days having that young kid. Like there's been Matej recently, but
Yeah, I guess it depends on like
in skiing, let's say.
consistently doing it. I guess maybe repetitively, because you see a lot of kids who are super young like winning something quite often. But yeah, like I guess it just all snowballed like that. Um, yeah, did that trip with Armada, which was super cool. That's where I met Kim Boberg and Corey Stanton, and then did Do Tour. A few months later, I got an invite to that, and got like fifth or something, fifth or sixth. And then I did a World Cup after that that I got invited to, and I got somewhere in top 10, maybe like seventh or eighth. Then I got the X invite, and I got second there. And then I think did some got it like a third at Euro X that year, and then it kind of just kept happening, I guess. But
Yeah, well, I guess I'm curious. Like right now, you're 28, 27, 28,
27, yeah,
27. Like you're further away from it. You have more distance, more memories. Because is when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, it's not as if you have time to reflect, I guess. You're just like one season after another event, another, you know,
yeah,
how do you look back on now that you're still young, you're pursuing POW and making movies and, skiing outside of competitions, which by any means, if you're successful, you still have 10, 15 years ahead. But also you can look back on a big part that is now over with, that you're kind of, I see you kind of at a middle roads in your career where you have a lot behind, but you have as much, if not more ahead of you.
yeah, man, it's super cool to reflect on. I mean, as much as halfpipe might not have been the thing I've always loved the most, I've got to attribute and thank halfpipe for a lot of the success and the name I've made for myself in the sport. Looking back on all those years, it's like I can almost remember every year. Um, yeah, like I don't really forget any of it. It's unreal, man. It's been a super cool ride, and those are some of the years of my life that I'll definitely never forget. Like especially thinking about when I was super young. Like I guess thinking forward, like if I ever have kids and they're 14, you'll think about it even more. You're like, huh, I remember when I was your age. Little things like that, right? But no, man, it's is unreal. Like I have so many different like milestones and things that come to mind throughout all the years during contests. Um, the first few years, I kind of stopped like full time focusing on them. There's for sure times that I'd like miss it. Um, just also knowing that like leaving when I did, it's like a mental battle within yourself that I know I could still do it and do super well.
Hmm.
But I also think that like if I would, I guess like relapse, you could call it, and like be like, oh no, I'll go back. I'll just do it a little more. It would probably shortly thereafter, like going to do a couple contests again, I would definitely get the same feeling of like, oh yeah, this is why I wanted to do something else. Just like, you know what I mean? So as I look back on it, dude, it's been unreal. It's been such a fun ride, and I'm super thankful to have had the career I have had and be able to keep doing what I'm doing right now is like the dream for me at the moment. It's trying to work as hard as I can and be very communicative with all the brands that support me and just ski as hard as I can. I'm trying to, like I said, trying to win out here if I can. Um, it's a lot of it's a lot of things I'm juggling for sure. So sometimes focusing on the skiing gets a little lost in translation. But I mean, anything I'm doing in skiing, I'd like to think that I'm trying to do it and be the best at it because I am. definitely competitive when it comes to skiing. I'm not a super competitive person in general, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason in skiing, I definitely am. And I would by no means say I'm the best at riding POW or street. But I think every year I'm trying to level up and try and have one of those full rounded segments that hopefully can be a memorable one because I still don't think I've quite attained that yet.
I think that the best way is just to show people more of you, because you've always been someone that everyone enjoys watching. Whether it's a pipe clip or a rail trick in the park or anything else, you have that special thing with your style, with your bag of tricks, whatever it is. Just keep giving us stuff. And
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm very much trying to. Sometimes these days I like want to post more on Insta, and I'll tell you the brands that I ride for want me to also. But I mean like some days it's just not possible when we're out there like trying to get a clip for the movie and like that takes so much work to barely get anyway. Like finding the time to grab a little something to put on like social. So it's been dope to like have a little week chilling. We went and rode some park here at Big Sky, and like I also have like gigabytes on gigabytes of dad cam footage that I pretty much film every single day. And I like cut some of them sometimes and put them on Insta, but I'd like to start putting that on our Deviate YouTube channel. So,
yeah,
like I said, juggling a lot of roles here, which I actually do love. It's fun. It's been really cool to like kind of build a brand, but um, maybe sometimes I feel like I got to look into maybe bring another somebody on board so I can try and put out like so ideally you want to build your own brand's content, right? Like your social pages, that kind of stuff. Not for the sake of like anybody else, but I just want to try and put more clips out because people want to watch them and be stoked for them to watch them. So yeah, it's kind of something I'm trying to do more of right now. See if I can put some more stuff out, and then also have that kind of like full movie project at the end of the season. But there's only so many like months of winter. It's crazy.
I have some questions from patrons on Patreon to end off the episode. So first off, there's Raf Diaz who asks, in your opinion, who has the best straight air in half pipe skiing?
Straight air and half pipe skiing. Um, I'm trying to think like throughout the years, the biggest ones, like the people who do like the biggest straight airs that are the most massive, historically has been like the Canadian team, kind of the era of like Justin Dory and Matt Margetts, and now like still like Simon Dartois
Hmm.
are like some of the people I've seen do the biggest straight airs, like safety grab. It's pretty insane. Like it's like something that they all can do too. Like Brendan McKay, he'll still do it. It's pretty insane. Yeah, it's like a pattern I've seen.
It was Geoffrey Poilievre was
Yeah.
doing the biggest airs, but was it straight airs or was it like spins?
No, alley flat five.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That was to the moon.
Yeah, but he did. So there's one I was actually there in teen that he did like a world record one. It's like Giro sponsored it and yeah, it was pretty insane. But the year before, it's a video that's around, you've probably seen it. He did one in Oslo at World Championships. Same trick, alley flat five, but it was mid run, and that one was definitely bigger. But there's no like height meter or anything
Right.
there, but it was
But
definitely bigger.
but I remember a classic photo that was shared everywhere where he's like
Yeah,
just so high that it looks absurd.
yeah,
Maybe
dude,
that's where it's from.
homie's a problem. That dude used to go so big. He still rips. I like see just shredding the local resorts in France. It's dope.
Next up in the question, there's Laurent Olivier Martin who asks, have you ever had a plan B outside of skiing?
Um, A few, yeah. I wouldn't say I've got one specific thing I'd like to do outside of skiing or after skiing. But there's a few different things I'm into for sure. I mean, it's definitely something that, I've been working hard on getting better at has been everything trying to build this production brand with Deviate and just kind of learning the ins and outs of what it takes. Granted, it's only a ski movie and we're putting it on YouTube, so not at all a serious level. But that's still you got to start somewhere, and it's been super fun, just kind of the whole producing back end of things. Um, so I definitely like kind of have a love for everything that has to do with filmmaking. Granted, I never chose to; it just kind of happened naturally.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's something I've been super into. Honestly, though, I am very into cars and trucks. So something in that world is definitely I spend a lot of time spinning a wrench.
Yeah, we saw that in the beginning of your good luck segment that you had
Yeah,
some mechanic skills.
kind of all the boys chirp me because I'm always wrenching. But like, I don't like to do, like I don't want to just change somebody's oil, but I like putting on parts and I like doing like custom projects. It's fun. I'm very, I like tinkering with stuff, I guess. Like I'm like always doing some random thing, whether we're on the road or whether we're I don't know, whether I'm at home just hanging, like we just had like some off days and I was just so bored sitting at home. I'm like in the garage. I'm just like tightening up the belt on my sled, like changing some oil on it, tightening up my track. I just like I guess I just love tinkering and wrenching. So also a lot of my boys back home will come to me when it comes with them wanting to like modify something on their car or truck and what parts to get and
Right.
I'll help them do it at my house or wiring stuff up. So I don't know exactly. I've got a lot of different like random things I'm into, but it'd be hard to say one thing that I have a specific plan B for, right? But I have a lot of different things that I've considered and I've kind of started looking into. So
Same guy, Laurent Olivier Martin, also asks, "What's your best Chris O'Connell story?"
best Chris O'Connell story. I mean, dude, there's so many. Like for the listeners who don't know, Chris O'Connell, legendary ski photographer and one of the original founders of Armada. He was the person who brought me on and signed me to Armada when I was 14 and took me down to New Zealand. And I mean, there was just, yeah, there's been so many funny trips with him. I mean, at the time I was so young, it's almost like he was a bit of like a second dad to me on the road, which was pretty funny because he is pretty ridiculous at the time. So funny to think of him at all as a dad. Granted, he is one now. He's got like three kids, but I've got like almost too many. Some that are just like,
Can't be
maybe not
told.
not super PG, but I do remember some funny times in South Korea when we went there with Phil, Hornbeck, um, O'Connell, myself, and Corey and Bishop. He's like got this like funny file he's always had from back in the day of all these like prank calls that he's super good at and stuff. He's like a real jokester, and we would just be like walking around South Korea, and he would just like you know say some of like the most absurd things to these people in English, like ridiculous stuff, and they kind of look back and smile, and they're like, "Oh yes,
Yeah, I think there's some. I think there's some shots of that either in Level One's Sunny or in the
yeah,
Sunny trailer. But I think you see him talking to some Japanese guy and kind of trolling him.
yeah, yeah." I mean, I went to Turkey with him also, um, like a bunch of New Zealand trips. Yeah, dude, just I think some a trip to Australia also. Just tons of super funny times that I was like, introduced to him at a young age on the latter end of his like kind of bantering before he was grown into an adult and starting to have a family, But
Yeah.
yeah, Chris is amazing. I was able to catch up with him this summer, so yeah, bunch of good times with Chris.
Holden Baldassi, who asks, what's your secret to overcoming so many obstacles in your career and staying positive?
I don't know if I have a secret. I mean, I think if you go through enough hardships, you just kind of learn to to take them on and carry on with the next day. But I suppose like kind of leads back to what I talked about before is staying present and level headed, not worrying too much about what happened before, what's going to happen in the future. I mean, you always want to be planning, right, for what's to come, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I think a little bit of it too is throughout dealing with some stuff and overcoming some hardships at a young age. At a very young age, I was kind of, whether I chose to or not, learned how to overcome some of these things and I guess matured at a much quicker rate at a young age than a lot of kids that I was going to school with or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I don't really know if I certainly don't have a secret to it. I think enough of it just happened that I learned how to deal with it. But I mean, you
Or
know,
I'd say maybe rephrase it aside from secret, more like what advice would you have to people going through obstacles and for them to stay positive, maybe? What's your.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I've gotten that question quite a bit for sure, and I guess something I've always considered um, is that I am lucky and definitely privileged, and I still have a roof over my head. I'm living in a beautiful place in Colorado, and at the end of the day, I think reminding yourself that when things aren't going your way or things seemingly are pretty bad or you're dealing with a lot of different stress and different things in your life, to always lean back and factor in on the good things that you do have and just keeping an optimistic mindset. I think yeah, my girlfriend even like um, kind of brings it up sometimes. Like I'm definitely the optimist between the two of us, and maybe sometimes too optimistic. But trying to keep an optimistic mindset and definitely like reminding yourself of what you do have and maybe the good things that have happened this year and just keeping the close friends that you care about around you and talking to them is definitely like I've got a good circle around me that helps me get through anything. So um, I guess I've always just been fairly optimistic.
Like even when you're in a like, because there's some years where it was like one injury or mishap after another, after another, after
Yeah.
another. Even in like, was there a point where you were like losing that optimist, Torin, or you always kept it?
I mean, I'm sure there was times that I probably was losing it, right? Like when things are repetitively just keep happening, you can't help but get down on yourself and just think like, what the hell? Like, why can't I catch a goddamn break? Um, but I guess it's hard to think back about like when you're not in the situation, right? Like, but granted, if you look at it this way, like where I'm at right now and what I've been doing and the things that I have and the people around me and the small little things and life's still going all right, is like a good indicator that as bad as things get, there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. And if you if you start kind of getting so down on yourself that you're doubting that there ever is any light at the end of the tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
is when you definitely can be in a dark place. So, like I said, having good people around you and good friends to talk to and family, like it's yeah, been a big factor in keeping the positivity, and then vice versa, like people I care about, making sure I'm just kind of there for them. It's a pretty simple task to ask of to just you know you never know what's going on with people around you or maybe people that you look up to, and I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, especially in this modern day and age with social media, right? Like it's such a highlight of your life,
Yeah.
everything on social media. When in reality, like everybody's got shit going on. Everybody's got their own issues. So keeping that in mind that nobody's life is perfect, no matter how it may look on social media or whatever you know your different opinions have been made on. But optimism is certainly key.
And to end it on a lighter note, Will Cameron asks, "What's your favorite ski movie and favorite ski movie segment?"
Oh man, that's a tough
That
one. That's always
that's
been a
the
tough
hardest
one.
one always.
Yeah, for anybody, that's a hard one. Like currently, there's been some. I guess like I go through phases, right? Like kind of when you're talking about like favorites of all time and like some of
Hmm.
the most iconic movies that like got me into skiing as a kid or stuff like that. I think one of like the first ski movies I saw and one that definitely had a pretty significant impact was um, Teddy Bear Crisis. And I think even still to this day, when I watch that movie, you're like, yeah, it's pretty mind blowing. It's just like,
Yeah, every time I watch the Tanner intro in that movie, like when he's like
yeah,
in the skate park
yeah, in the
talking,
skate park at Park City.
the nostalgia.
Yeah, and you almost feel like when you watch it, you're like, you can almost like put yourself in their shoes, and you can think about
Yeah.
like whether they knew it or not, they were making such history at the time, and it's like it's cool to think about because I always have this thought of like what we're doing on the road and especially as you're nearing the end of the season, like you're driving around to these different locations and you're getting this shot, and then like somebody gives you a call that snow's good here, and it's like kind of this crazy, I don't know, like vibe, I guess. There's probably a better word for it, but just like when you're making something that you can feel is special, like that's how I feel like it looks when I'm watching Teddy Bear Crisis. Like
Hmm.
a lot of that's in Utah, and they're like hitting these like iconic jumps, some for the first time, and you're kind of like, it's just it's really a movie you watch that you're like, damn, they're making history here, and like you feel it when you see it. You're like, I mean, in the moment, they're probably just like same as anybody, bantering with the boys, like having a good time, tossing up a wedge, and they're getting clips. But yeah, just I like to feel it. It's kind of iconic,
Dude,
and
iconic visuals. I feel like, there's kind of these when they're introducing athletes, it's
yeah,
all like time lapses going
yeah,
around
yeah,
them. Dude, I feel like that was so influential. The stylistic choices in the movies for
yeah,
the years that came after.
yeah. Chris Osnes, the guy who made that movie, definitely has like an insane eye, and definitely put out some very special stuff. Yeah, those intros with like the little blocks with the names and like
Hmm.
all the lights moving fast, spinning, and the soundtrack of that movie is one that like, I mean, it's also one of the first movies I saw too, right? So it's kind of like plays a super big role in uh in my childhood, like watching movies, and it was like, yeah, this crazy time. I remember like having so many Oakley posters too as a kid that had like a lot of the outerwear that they were wearing in that movie, like the green pants with the pink Oakley, the white pants with the blue Oakley writing, like same pant, different colorway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just a lot of stuff that I think like it brings back memories, and like I just really feel like an impact watching it. Um, segment wise from that movie, like I don't know, it's hard to like.
Or it doesn't necessarily have to be from that movie. It could be from any movie.
Yeah, favorite segment to me is like it's kind of tough. It's one I usually have to like think about. It doesn't like come off the top of my head, but um, I mean, I guess just certain stuff that like is super well rounded has always been, you know, what's mind blowing to me. Like I've said even before in this era, like Henrik in Salute. Granted, it's not a full segment, but like 2-year project and just the amount of shots.
Dude,
Like,
Henrik and Salute is the best booter performance ever.
yeah, almost every jump trick like he can do, he did in the backcountry throughout that movie in different areas. Which like we like rewatched it the other day, and I'm like watching it like, what else could he have done? There's like no tricks left to do. He like did every trick, like
Hmm.
first triple, forward triple 14 in the backcountry. That one's actually up for debate because I don't know the exact date on it. Bobby also did triple 14 that same year in dynamic medium. And I don't know, like, if Henrik in Chamonix or Bobby in the States, which one was first, right? But the first two ever in the same season, like, pretty insane. So, and then, mix that in with all of his street clips in that movie. It's one that definitely just like the performance of like the ATV of that.
I'd want to see a cut of it all together in a 4 minute.
Yeah, yeah, like an actual, if you just did like a full just segment of that, it'd be like overwhelming to watch.
Yeah.
Like,
A Salute Enric remix all together, man.
yeah, I mean, there's so many. Yeah, when I think about like favorite movie projects, I almost think about like iconic ones of the past that had such an influence on me as a kid,
Hmm.
um, to like current stuff I watch of like, like it's hard to debate that like Sammy's projects, like people can like top the kind of skiing that he does. Like I really just admire Sammy's skiing in the sense of he's very much to like freestyle backcountry, like, and that's not like tossing up wedges and like handmade stuff, he's like tricking like massive pillow lines and stuff like this is what I'm so into, like I can respect the like mountaineering of like summiting a huge peak and skiing down, but at the end of the day, like I'm a park skier through and through that like is skiing POW. So what I like visibly like to watch is like freestyle backcountry, and a mix of like wedges to like tricking natural features, tricking pillow stuff. I mean, like Sammy is the undeniable goat of that category, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm so into watching it, and then like the child labor movies are like some of my favorite street projects right now too. It's like, yeah, there's so much, and I'm very much a student of the game. Like, yeah, I go through phases. I watch like nonstop skiing and snowboarding movies, like the Dust Box too. It's like, yeah, I could go on forever. But then in the summer, sometimes like I won't watch anything skiing for months at a time.
Mm. You're so deep into skiing that it's good to take some breaks just to breathe it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, definitely. I value summer because of that. But yeah, favorite movie. Long story short, not long story short the movie, but long story short, favorite movie is Teddy Bear Crisis.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if I like took some notes, I could probably come up with some better answers actually, because there's more that I definitely respect and love. I mean, Oystein too, his part that came out not this year but last year in the Slush movie,
Yeah.
so good. Like the
Yeah.
well-rounded shots in that are also something I was a huge fan of. So yeah, I mean, I live it. I love it. Study it. I'm a student of the game.
Dude, a student and a master.
Try to be, but I find that it's something you can never master.
Really? Well, or you're always mastering your craft?
I mean, I don't know. Like you just,
Because I say, like, let's say Phil Casabon is still doing it, but to me he's a master of the game. Like,
yeah,
I see what he dropped with Hornbeck, and I'm like, that's mastery.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. He's a master of his craft. But if you asked him, he would say like there's so much more for him to attain, and like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like and that's what keeps you, like thriving to try and be the best. Same thing as like I elaborated on Filming Apart. Like you're never fully content, and that's good because that keeps you hungry. And if you're not hungry, you're not going to be trying super hard.
Hmm. Yeah. Something you must have. Yeah.
I heard. I was listening to Gabe Ferguson. Shout out him on the bomb hole the other day. Good homie, snowboarder from Bend, and he. I listened to it yesterday, and he said something that kind of stuck with me. That his brother Ben said to him, like they were kind of talking about contests because he rode half pipe too, Ben and Gabe. And Gabe was like, yeah, Ben once told me, like, if you don't have butterflies at the top, you're not going to land.
Mm.
Essentially, like, getting to the point that, like, if you're just chilling at the top and you're not scared, it almost like doesn't mean enough to you, and you're not going to like have that performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I had that yesterday where we're filming a part that I'm really stoked on with Matt Duff, who's
Yeah.
an up and comer that's insanely good.
Yeah. I met him at, in Oregon this past summer, and I saw his stuff from the project last year, dude. He's sick.
He he stepped up to a lot of big spot this year
Yeah.
that like you can't fuck up or you're gonna get hurt. And he was
Yeah.
always like clutch. And then yesterday we went to a spot that didn't get butterflies because it was like not scary and a mellow spot. And he was struggling. And we're like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
when we don't bring you to a sketchy spot, then it's not,
Yeah. Just, I mean, it's, like I said, pressure is a privilege,
yeah,
and you got to thrive off of it. And yeah, it's an interesting mental game what we do, whether you're competing or filming. But there's certainly nothing like the satisfaction, whether that's um, at the end of the year, seeing your project as a whole at a premiere or at a contest. But it's also an answer I've given a lot when it comes to like the gratification of filming versus contest.
hmm
You know, that high that you live off of winning an event, that sticks around for, maybe a day, couple days after the event, you're stoked.
hmm
But when you're in the theater and you're at a premiere and you see your full project come to life, especially if it's something you're pretty proud of, like a part that you're pleased on and worked hard on, hearing like the input from the crowd and your peers on something like that you worked all season on is like such a similar high, but almost something that you feel like could last even longer. Just kind of alluding to like being a student of the game and how much like I could tell you certain people's segments to certain songs from 2009, that like stick with me. But if you ask me who won X Games in 2009, it would take me quite a while to think of who that was. It just doesn't. I mean,
yeah,
certain ones stick with you, right? But
yeah, I
certain
agree,
video parts really stick with you.
dude. There's some songs that I hear on the radio, and I'm like, I tell my girlfriend or whatever, I'm like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
that's that guy that year in Level One movie.
yeah. And like our girlfriends are like, "What the fuck are you? How do you know this?" I guess I get that with some contests just of my own sake because I always listen to music, and when I hear a song, I'll get nostalgia and remember like, oh yeah, like this was when I was at X Games in Oslo in 2016. This was that song. But like that's within my own head, right? But I mean, Henrik put it best, and it's words to live by, right? The contests are your concerts, and the video part is your album.
Yeah.
It's I love that quote by him.
And it goes back to what we were saying about how far do you want to push it,
Yep.
You can work on your album for 3 months and drop it, or you can work on your album for 2 years and, at that point it's entirely personal and it's just how far you're willing to work on that album.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
out what you put in.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Torin, for doing it. Really stoked we got to do an episode together.
Yeah, dude, this was sick. Thanks for having me, man.
Congrats on everything you've done. Congrats on Deviate. Hope the rest of the season goes well. Hope you get the best pal ever.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate it, man. I'm stoked. We're about to drive this evening actually on a little few day strike mission and then head up to Canada after that. So hoping this next last month push delivers the goods and
Yeah,
hopefully
man.
get some shots I'm stoked on.
Cheers.
Cheers, dude. Have a good one.
So this is it for episode 39 with Torin Yater-Wallace. Big thank you to the sponsors once again, Planks Clothing, Decan's Restaurants, and Access Board Shop. Also, big shout out to the patrons on Patreon. If you want to join, check it out at patreon.com/the Podcast. Peace.